Imagine for a second uh, that it is a completely ordinary, just sweltering summer morning.
Right, one of those miserable hot days.
Exactly. You walk out the front door of your perfectly manicured suburban home. You wave to a neighbor across the street. You head over to the garbage cans on the curb.
Just completely mundane.
Yeah, completely. You lift the heavy metal lid expecting to just see, the usual household trash. But sitting right there on top is a shirt.
And it's not just any shirt.
No, it's not just a random piece of clothing. It is the specific, unmistakable plaid shirt that you personally bought for your husband's 35th birthday.
Wow.
But it's not neatly folded.
Ugh.
The fabric is flecked with discarded, dried-out eggshells. It's dusted with old coffee grounds. And underneath the breakfast trash, the fabric is stiff and covered in dark, undeniable bloodstains.
It is the ultimate intrusion of a nightmare into the waking world. I mean, you are looking at an object that represents love and domestic partnership, and it is violently overwritten by evidence of sheer brutality. The human brain simply isn't wired to process that kind of paradox in real time.
It really isn't. And that horrific, reality-shattering moment is the starting point for today's deep dive. We are plunging headfirst into the incredibly gripping true crime narrative extracted from the novel The Secret Lives of Murderers' Wives by Elizabeth Arnott.
Such a phenomenal piece of work.
It really is. And this isn't your typical whodunit. Today, our mission is to focus entirely on the psychological and chronological journey of one specific woman, Beverley Lightfoot.
The ex-wife of the notorious, and I should clarify, fictional within the world of the book Heatwave Killer, Henry Lightfoot.
Right. We're going to map out her agonizing progression from that exact moment in the trash can all the way to a suffocating, terrifying moment where she steps onto a brightly lit stage at a public LAPD gala to share her absolute darkest secrets with a ballroom full of strangers.
Which is exactly why this narrative is so compelling. I mean, as a society, and certainly within the true crime community, we have this intense, almost obsessive focus on the psychology of the killer.
Oh, absolutely. We all want to know what makes a monster tick.
Right. Or, conversely, we focus on the brilliant, dogged detectives who finally bring them to justice. But we consistently overlook the collateral damage. We ignore the people who slept next to the monster.
The people who knew the smell of their neck.
Exactly. The people who washed their clothes, who raised children with them, yet were entirely blind to the atrocities they were committing in the dark. The Secret Lives of Murderers' Wives by Elizabeth Arnott really forces us to look at that extremely uncomfortable reality.
But I have to stop you there, because that is the exact question every single person listening is asking right now.
How do you not know?
Yes. How do you not know? How do you wash a bloody shirt or see your husband come home at 3 a.m. and just go about your Tuesday? I mean, is it really blindness? Or is it a choice?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's the central friction of Beverley's entire existence. To really understand it, we have to look at the environment Arnott builds.
The set?
Yes, let's look at the setting. Berryview, California, 1966. The cultural and physical atmosphere is crucial here. We are in the middle of a suffocating, relentless heat wave.
And it's not just a couple of warm days.
No, this is a meteorological standoff. The temperature refuses to drop. There is no breeze. It's just this muggy, oppressive stink of summer radiating off the asphalt.
Right. And it's not just the weather that's boiling over. The backdrop of this intense heat is a world that feels like it's losing its mind.
The 1960s were incredibly volatile.
Exactly. The news on the radio is constantly blaring. You've got headlines of these record-breaking temperatures running right alongside horrific dispatches about bombings in Hanoi and the Charles Whitman sniper attack at the University of Texas. The anxiety isn't just in Beverly's house, it's ambient, it's everywhere.
The 1960s were a period of massive cultural upheaval and underlying dread, and Arnott uses this heat wave as a physical manifestation of that dread. But for Beverley, the heat goes far beyond discomfort. It has become a literal psychological trigger.
Yeah, let's actually dig into that because the term Pavlovian response gets thrown around a lot. What is actually happening in her brain when the temperature spikes?
Well, when we talk about trauma, we have to understand that the brain doesn't just record the scary event itself, it records the entire sensory environment surrounding the event.
Like the lighting and the sounds.
Exactly. The amygdala, which is the brain's fear center, takes a snapshot of the lighting, the smells, the sounds, and yes, the barometric pressure and the temperature. For Beverley, the day her husband Henry was finally raided and arrested by the police was a day of blistering heat.
So years later, when the thermometer hits 90 degrees,
her body physically reacts as if the trauma is happening all over again. Her brain sounds the alarm.
that sounds exhausting.
It is. Arnott explicitly writes that every time the temperature rises, Beverly is violently forced to remember the thud of the police helicopter blades, the red flashing lights reflecting off her suburban windows, and the sheer chaos of the arrest.
She can't escape it.
No, she cannot escape her own biology. The weather itself has been weaponized against her peace of mind.
Which drags her right back to that searing flashback of the initial discovery we talked about. She's standing outside in this oppressive heat. She notices a skinny, mangy coyote locking eyes with her from across the street.
Which, by the way, is such a brilliantly unsettling detail.
It really is. It's this wild, predatory intrusion into this manicured, safe, domestic space. So she lifts the lid of the neighbor's trash can, and there it is, the birthday shirt.
The visual Arnott creates here is masterful. What's fascinating here is how trauma anchors itself to specific sensory details. We have the ultimate symbols of safe, boring domesticity eggshells and coffee grounds.
The literal leftovers of a peaceful family breakfast.
Exactly. And they are physically smeared against the ultimate symbol of violent reality, the bloodstains of a murdered woman.
This is where I struggle, though. She sees the blood. She knows it's his shirt. At this point, how does the brain not immediately snap to, my husband is a murderer?
Because the psyche's primary job is to keep you functioning. If your brain fully accepts that the man you love, the father of your child, is a serial killer, your reality collapses.
You can't just go back inside and make a sandwich.
Right, you cannot function. So the brain engages in profound dissociation. As Dr. Garvey, the psychologist mentioned in the narrative, points out, the brain buries these memories and involuntarily detaches from reality to protect the psyche from total annihilation.
Okay, I get the self-preservation aspect, but let me push back on that a bit. Subconscious protection is one thing, but doesn't it cross the line into willful ignorance at a certain point?
This is a very fine line.
Because Beverly later reflects on all these glaring red flags leading up to his arrest. The sudden, terrifying explosions of rage, his obsessive need to control her movements, dictating exactly when she had to be home. That isn't just a blind spot. That's living in active fear.
You're touching on a very real debate in forensic psychology. Where is the line between victimhood and complicity? Look at a real-world parallel. Paula Rader, the wife of the BTK killer, Dennis Rader.
Oh, wow, yeah.
They were married for 34 years. He was hanging women in their city, writing taunting letters to the police, and supposedly she had no idea. The public absolutely crucified her. They said exactly what you're saying she had to know. It's willful ignorance.
Right. And in the book, Beverly has this heartbreaking memory that perfectly illustrates this desperation to not know the worst. She was pregnant with their daughter, Audrey. She was suffering from debilitating morning sickness, hiding in bed.
And Henry comes home late.
Incredibly late. She curls up, pretending to be asleep, and she smells another woman's perfume on him. Or, at least, she convinces herself it's another woman's perfume.
That is the crux of it. She admits later that she actively convinced herself he was having an affair. Why? Because an affair is a known tragedy.
It has a script.
Exactly. It's painful, it's devastating, but society has a script for it. You cry, you get divorced, or you work through it, but you survive. If she had allowed herself to fully investigate his absences, the blood, the sudden rages, she might have found the monster. Her brain offered her a lesser evil to survive the moment.
And the tragedy is that the physical world absolutely refuses to let her maintain that compartmentalization anymore. Fast forward to the present day of the novel in 1966. Arnott paints this visceral picture of the ongoing heat wave in Berryview.
It's stifling.
You have these traveling salesmen walking up and down the residential streets, knocking on doors, trying to sell freestanding fans and ice machines. They're lugging these bulky Coleman coolers, their hair slicked to their foreheads with sweat. But Beverly isn't looking at the salesmen. She is looking past them into the yards of her neighbors.
And what she sees is a completely mundane summer scene that has been completely poisoned for her. She sees the neighborhood husbands standing wide-legged in their yards, watering their lawns. Because of the heat, they have their shirts unbuttoned, and the fabric is soaking wet from the spray of the garden sprinklers.
And the second Beverly sees a soaked shirt clinging to a man's chest, she is instantly violently transported back to Henry's bloody shirt in the trash can.
The trauma is inescapable.
It's superimposed over everything. Every soaked shirt is a bloody shirt.
Every hot day is the day the police dogs tore up her front lawn looking for evidence. It is an endless loop. And this internal chaos makes her external actions in the present moment so fascinating. While she is drowning in these horrific memories, what is she actually physically doing? She is sitting in a car, trying to make sure she looks flawlessly, perfectly appropriate.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is such a jarring pivot. Let's move from that suffocating memory right into the suffocating reality of the present moment. Beverly is sitting in the driver's seat of her Ford Cortina. The vinyl seats are tacky and hot, sticking to the back of her
It's
legs.
just incredibly uncomfortable.
She is parked in the slick, melting asphalt lot of an expensive hotel, and she is steeling herself to walk inside and attend the LAPD gala.
The LAPD Gala, the Lion's Den, a room filled with hundreds of law enforcement officers, their wives, the press, and the very detectives who tore her life apart.
Exactly. And the way she prepares for this is agonizing. It's not just picking out an outfit. It is a surgical obsessive ritual. She's wearing this cream twill dress that she had specially dry cleaned just for today.
Very specific choices.
It's belted very narrowly at the waist, tied with a conservative silk bow at the neck. She spent her entire morning carefully, painstakingly painting her nails this completely innocuous carnation pink. We learned she spent days just standing in front of her bedroom mirror, holding different garments against her body, running through this incredibly rigid set of internal rules.
Let's break down those rules, because they are a direct reflection of the impossible societal burden placed on the families of perpetrators. Her rules for dressing are very strict. Nothing too stern, nothing playful for obvious reasons, absolutely no cleavage. And the most important rule of all, absolutely no red.
It sounds exhausting. Why put herself through this level of mental torture just over a dress, especially when she's about to go do something so incredibly brave and difficult?
Because she knows the true crime audience, both inside that ballroom and in the real world, is deeply fundamentally suspicious of her.
They're waiting for her to mess up.
Precisely. She knows exactly what the pearl-wearing wives of the police officers will think when they look at her. They will look at her and think, I would have known. If my husband was sneaking out the back door and murdering young women, I would have stopped him.
Which is really just a defense mechanism, right? If they can convince themselves that Beverly was just a terrible, oblivious, or complicit wife, then they get to feel safe. They get to believe that a monster could never fool them.
It's the just world fallacy in action. We want to believe that bad things happen to people who somehow deserve it or who miss the obvious signs. So society demands that women like Beverly adopt a very specific uniform.
The murderer's wife uniform.
Exactly. If she walks into that gala looking too confident, too beautiful, or too put together, the crowd will instantly brand her as a cold-blooded co-conspirator. They'll say she's enjoying the notoriety. But if she looks too messy or distraught, they'll call her unhinged. She has to curate this perfect image of a naive, simpering, harmless victim to continually prove her innocence.
We actually see this dynamic explored so well later in the book, when Beverly is talking with her friends Margot and Elsie.
Who are also, unbelievably, ex-wives of convicted killers.
Right. And Margot is this glamorous, defiant character. She absolutely refuses to play the victim role for society. She essentially says, I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I look like a victim?
But Beverly doesn't have that armor.
No, she understands that if she missteps by even a fraction, society will label her a floozy or a willing accomplice.
And this anxiety isn't just abstract, it's personalized. As she sits in that sweltering car, the voice she hears in her head judging her isn't some faceless crowd. It's the voice of her hypercritical mother, Alice.
Oh, the mother's voice.
Yes, the mother's voice is echoing in her mind, saying things like, with a face as round as yours, Beverly, you really should reconsider whether bangs are the best option.
The maternal judgment of the 1960s was a weapon all its own. She's about to confess her deepest trauma to a room full of cops, and she's worried her mom would think her face looks too fat. It's absurd, but it's so human.
Very human.
And then, the meticulous armor she's built cracks in a matter of seconds. It is such a brilliantly catastrophic scene. Beverly is sitting in the car trying to psych herself up, trying to breathe through the heat of that heavy twill dress, when she looks out the window and spots Roger Greaves.
Right, Deputy Roger Greaves. He's the imposing, physically intimidating LAPD officer who physically helped arrest her husband, Henry, and he's walking across the parking lot with his wife.
It triggers an immediate, visceral panic. Beverly shrinks down in her driver's seat. She's trying to disappear. Her shoulders are practically touching her earlobes. She's trying to touch up her makeup. And in her panic, she loses her grip on a brand new tube of Caudy lipstick.
Oh, no.
It fumbles out of her shaking hands, tumbles into the footwell, but on the way down, it leaves a jagged, thick crimson smear right across the front of her pristine, dry-cleaned cream dress.
After days of obsessing over ensuring there was absolutely no red anywhere on her person, the universe brands her with it anyway.
I mean, we don't even need to overanalyze the literary metaphor here. It is just the most agonizing, relatable nightmare. You have tried so hard to look perfect to avoid judgment, and right before you step into the spotlight, you are physically marked by a giant red stain. It's devastating.
It symbolizes the association she cannot wash away. She is quite literally wearing the guilt on her chest. The panic is so intense that she actually reaches into her glove box, pulls out Henry's old metal hip flask, and takes a burning sip of warm, stale liquor just to stop her hands from shaking.
And with that liquid courage, she finally forces the car door open. And the moment she steps out of the stifling heat of the Cortina and into the blinding glare of the parking lot, she has an interaction that perfectly encapsulates the massive chasm between her reality and the reality of the rest of the world.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this parking lot scene is crucial because it shows how intimately living with a killer permanently alters your worldview. It rewires your baseline for safety.
Oh, absolutely.
Watch what Beverly does the second she steps out. Her fingertips are crackling with anxiety, and she physically walks around the car, checking all the locks multiple times. It is a compulsive, trauma-induced ritual. She knows that monsters exist because she married one.
Yes, and while she is performing this anxious ritual, she spots another woman in the parking lot. Arnott describes her as a young, beautiful Jean Shrimpton type, wearing a sleeveless turtleneck. She steps out of a shiny Plymouth Barracuda, grabs her purse, and just walks away. She doesn't lock the door. She doesn't look over her shoulder.
Which to Beverly is the equivalent of jumping out of an airplane without a parachute.
Beverly's reaction is entirely involuntary. She physically bolts across the hot asphalt, chasing this young woman down. She grabs her by the shoulder and tells her point blank, with total intensity, that she needs to go back and lock her car. She warns her that if she leaves it unlocked, someone could easily climb inside and conceal himself in the back, waiting behind the driver's seat.
Now, analyze the young woman's response because it tells us everything about the naive public. She touches her delicate crucifix necklace, a symbol of protection, laughs condescendingly, and says something to the effect of, "There must be 300 armed cops in that building. This is the safest parking lot in the city."
Wow.
She looks at Beverly like she is completely unhinged, pointedly locks her door just to appease the crazy lady, and stalks off toward the hotel.
But is Beverly actually trying to help here? Or is she just projecting her own trauma onto a stranger? I mean, it is a parking lot full of cops. The girl's entirely wrong to feel safe.
That is the tragic irony of the scene. The girl thinks she is right, but Beverly knows she is wrong. Beverly's internal monologue notes that pretty doesn't keep you alive. Beverly knows exactly how predators operate because her husband, Henry, was a man who bypassed the bad neighborhoods. He walked right into safe, quiet suburban homes through unlocked back doors.
He exploited that trust.
He exploited the exact kind of blind trust that this young woman in the Barracuda is exhibiting.
Beverly realizes that proximity to law enforcement doesn't prevent a murder. The cops inside that hotel didn't stop Henry from killing 7 women. They only caught him after the bodies were buried.
And this brief, stinging rejection by the young woman really clarifies Beverly's core motivation for the entire novel. Why is she subjecting herself to the torture of this gala? She is terrified of the judgment. She is shaking so hard she needs liquor from a glove box, but she feels this crushing, almost inherited responsibility to protect other women.
Even if they don't want to hear it.
Right. She feels immense guilt that she failed to see the violence operating in her own bedroom, so now she views it as her cosmic duty to warn the innocent, naive public about the violence lurking in the world, even if they hate her for it.
It's an incredibly heavy burden. She takes that sting of rejection, turns around and walks out of the blinding, migraine-inducing sunlight of the parking lot and transitions into the dark, draped, intimidating belly of the beast, the hotel ballroom.
The sensory shift here is massive and abrupt. Arnott describes the ballroom as being veiled with heavy black drapes to block out the sun, lit only by these jittery, dim chandeliers. It is crammed with people, creating this overwhelming hothouse fog of body heat and stale air.
Beverly walks into this space, and she is immediately hit by a wall of sound and smell. It's the sharp scent of Aramis cologne mixed with cigarette smoke. It's the low, booming baritone sounds of men in tuxedos telling loud, unprompted, boastful stories about their own brilliance.
And surrounding them are the wives.
Yes, wearing their own kind of uniform skimmer dresses, strings of pearls, earrings, plump as Christmas tree baubles, all fanning themselves in the heat.
It's a physical manifestation of the patriarchy and power dynamics of 1960s law enforcement. The men take up all the sonic and physical space, and the women are decorative accessories.
Beverly immediately shrinks to the edges of the room. She hides by the wall, acutely, agonizingly aware of the red gaudy lipstick stain sitting right on her chest. She plucks 2 glasses of champagne off a passing waiter's tray. She downs the first one immediately just to quiet her nerves, and she clutches the second one tightly just to give her shaking hand something to hold on to.
She's just trying to survive the room.
She even has this dark, fleeting thought where she wishes her friends Margot or Elsie were there with her, just so they could create a spectacle of murderers' wives, a sort of defiant, "you want a freak show? Here we are" moment.
Which highlights the immense gulf between her reality and the reality of the people in that room. Let's look at how the two different groups view the concept of murder. For the police officers drinking scotch and their pearl-wearing wives chatting about recipes, a murder is a case file.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the contrast is so sharp.
It is. For them, it's 6 letters scrawled on a manila folder. It's a career-making headline, or physical evidence locked in an evidence room at the end of a shift. It's a sensational topic to discuss over a meatloaf loaf dinner.
But for Beverly, murder isn't a conversation starter. It is the thermonuclear destruction of her reality. It is the permanent, humiliating loss of her identity. She went from being Beverly the mother, Beverly the neighbor, to Beverly the monster's wife.
And while she is hiding in the shadows, trying to physically drain the tension from the tight muscles in the back of her neck, the ultimate symbol of that police reality finds her. She feels her skin prickle, she turns around, and she is face to face with Chief Tom Cornwell.
Chief Cornwell, the head of the California Major Crimes Investigation Unit. He is described as gruff, unsmiling, a man who takes up all the oxygen in the room. He represents the absolute, unquestionable authority of the police, and more importantly to Beverly, he is the very man who sat across from her in an interrogation room years ago and aggressively accused her of knowing about Henry's crimes and covering for him.
The power dynamic in this brief confrontation in the dark corridor is fascinating. Cornwell holds the ultimate trump card. He controls the narrative. Beverly has the sharp realization that men like Cornwell are the default heroes of society.
They never have to be nervous.
Right, they never have to hide against the wall with a stained dress. Society implicitly trusts them to define who is good and who is evil. He tells the public what to think.
Cornwell looks at her, ignores her obvious distress, and just asks if she's ready. And everything inside her is screaming no. She wants to run back to her car. But she realizes that if she turns around and walks out, Cornwell and the rest of the media will simply write her story for her.
They'll control her legacy.
They will stand on that stage and imply that she was a cowardly, complicit wife who couldn't face the music. If she wants any ownership of her own life, she has to speak.
The somatic experience of her anxiety in this moment is overwhelming. Arnott describes her hearing being completely blunted by white noise. Her veins feel electric with dread. She is in full fight-or-flight mode.
And then the microphone on the main stage squeals with feedback. It's time.
That squeal is the starting gun for the climax of her journey. Chief Cornwell struts up to the stage to absolutely thunderous applause. And the way he frames the narrative in his speech is incredibly telling about the ego involved in high-profile true crime cases.
Oh, his speech is entirely obnoxiously self-aggrandizing. He doesn't talk about the victims. He talks about the unprecedented resources it took to catch the heatwave killer. He literally milks the applause, pausing and holding up his hands to let the room clap louder for his brilliance.
It's all a show for him.
It is. He gets incredibly dramatic, leaning into the mic to tell the crowd that placing the handcuffs on Henry Lightfoot was like touching pure evil. It is a performance. It is all about him.
And then he springs the trap on Beverly. He introduces her to the crowd as his proudest moment. He patronizingly calls her the brave wife who worked openly with the police. He effectively forces her out of the shadows, making it impossible for her to retreat. He ambushes her into the blinding glare of the spotlight.
She has no choice. She starts walking toward the center of the stage. And as she does, she isn't just dealing with stage fright. She is violently assaulted by PTSD. The sensory memories come flooding back, hitting her in waves.
She smells Henry's Old Spice. She smells the engine oil he used to wash off his hands. She remembers the intimate domestic feeling of cooling against his back in bed like a pill bug on a cold night.
And those memories of love are immediately smashed against the memory of the day of his arrest. She sees the golden, slanted afternoon sunlight. She remembers the oven mitts with little rabbits on them that she was wearing. She hears the deafening crash of her ceramic casserole dish smashing into 100 pieces on the linoleum floor as the police kicked her door in.
It is the ultimate collision of her dual realities. And as she approaches that microphone, looking out at the hundreds of expectant, judgmental faces, this raises an important question. What exactly is her role in this narrative? Is she a villain, an accomplice,
Yeah,
a victim?
that's the core question of the novel.
Exactly. The true crime community, both the fictional one in the ballroom and the real one listening to true crime content, constantly wrestles with how to categorize these women. And the truth is, Beverly herself hasn't figured it out.
She is living in this torturous, impossible duality. On one hand, she was physically close enough to a prolific serial killer to know that his bottom left canine tooth had a tiny black stain on it from a childhood run-in with a baseball bat. She knew the specific, quiet sighing noise he made when he fell into deep sleep.
But on the other hand, she was so entirely consumed by the mundane, exhausting, day-to-day survival of 1960s suburban motherhood, making casseroles, appeasing her mother, keeping the lawn green, that she was completely effortlessly played by him. He used her normal life as his camouflage.
The immense internal fortitude it takes for her to step up to that microphone in front of the cops who tore her house apart simply cannot be overstated. We see her physical pain. The stiff seams of her dry-clean twill dress are digging painfully into her sweating neck. She is vividly picturing the neat red indentations the fabric is leaving in her skin, all while she is desperately struggling to remember how to form basic words.
Her internal conflict reaches its absolute peak right here. Remember, this is a woman who desperately craves anonymity. She manicured her lawn perfectly so the neighbors wouldn't talk. She agonized over her dress so society wouldn't judge her.
And now she's up on a stage.
Yes. Yet in this moment, she is sacrificing all of that respectability. She is offering herself up for public consumption and brutal judgment. Why? In a guilt-driven, desperate bid to help the police understand how killers blend in, hoping it might prevent future victims.
She steps right up to the mic. She takes a deep, ragged, audible breath that echoes through the speakers. She lowers her eyelids against the blinding glare of the stage lights, and she delivers her opening lines to the dead silent crowd. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Beverley Lightfoot. I was the wife of Henry James Lightfoot, who, between 1957 and 1961, killed 7 women in the Bay Area of California. This is my story.
It is a moment of profound bravery, absolute vulnerability, and complete exposure. She owns the name, she owns the association. But as is so often the case in the dark world of true crime, the resolution of one horror merely opens the door to the next.
Right. She delivers the speech. She survives the gauntlet. So what does this all mean? The chronological journey we just traced, from finding the bloody shirt in the neighbor's trash can to speaking her truth into that microphone, it forges Beverly into an entirely new kind of protagonist.
She's transformed.
She finally finishes speaking, and she exits that stage to deafening applause.
Yeah.
But she is completely numb. She feels hollowed out. And stepping off the stage doesn't bring her the relief she was hoping for.
No, because the world doesn't stop for her trauma. As she is walking back into the dark corridors trying to escape the noise, she walks past Chief Cornwell in the shadows, and she overhears an officer rush up to the chief.
Right, the breathless officer.
The officer is breathless, and he reports an incident. A new body has been found in a nearby jurisdiction, and the officer specifically, chillingly, notes that the state of the body is unusual.
This is the discovery of the body of Cheryl Herrera. She was a local track athlete, and she was found murdered with an arrow through her eye. This bizarre, horrific detail is the catalyst for the entire rest of the novel. Beverly, along with her friends Elsie and Margot, will soon realize the police are failing, and they will launch their own secret underground investigation into this new killer.
And this moment is where Beverly's entire perspective shifts. The true crime genre often overlooks the unique trauma and insight of the perpetrator's family. Beverly realizes that her horrific proximity to evil, the very thing she just spent an hour apologizing for on stage, has actually given her a highly unique, albeit entirely unwanted expertise.
She knows how a killer thinks.
She knows how a killer lies. She knows how they hide their tracks at home. Her realization that a new killer is operating nearby bridges her past trauma with her future mission.
There is a truly brilliant piece of literary framing by Arnott in this exact moment, right after the speech. As the junior officer is delivering the news of this new, mutilated corpse to the chief, Beverly notices the officer's eyes lingering on her chest. He is staring directly at the red Cuddy lipstick stain on her dress.
It is such a powerful image, It perfectly ties Beverly's perceived indelible guilt to the ongoing present-day violence against women. She tried to wash her hands of it by confessing on stage, but the stain is still there. She is intrinsically, permanently linked to the violence of men.
But the difference now is that she has agency. As we wrap up this massive deep dive, we've extracted a truly harrowing psychological journey from Elizabeth Arnott's The Secret Lives of Murderers' Wives. We've traced Beverly's excruciating steps from that sweltering, reality-breaking discovery in her neighbor's trash can, through the meticulous, fear-driven armoring of her physical appearance, all the way to the terrifying, blinding exposure of the LAPD gala stage.
And the reason this matters to you, the listener, is because it actively challenges us to change how we consume these stories. It forces us to look beyond the sensationalized, almost mythic figure of the serial killer. It demands that we deeply consider the collateral damage, the shattered lives of the families left in the wake of the violence.
It's about the people left behind.
Furthermore, it forces us to examine the heavy, suffocating masks of appearance we all wear to satisfy society's judgment, and what it truly takes to rip those masks off and stand in your truth for the greater good. Beverly transforms from the oblivious wife into the only person equipped to recognize the signs of a new monster.
It is a phenomenal character arc, and it leaves us with a chilling question to mull over tonight. Think about your own life, your own safe routines. If you walked outside tomorrow morning and found a blood-soaked shirt hidden in the trash, belonging to the person currently sleeping next to you, how long would it take your brain to override its own survival instincts and accept what it truly meant? And once you finally knew the terrible truth, would you have the courage to stand in front of a room full of strangers and confess that you loved a monster?